Kashika?
I said we can go live in 10, we are going live in 10 seconds, so we can start in next 10 seconds.
Thank you. A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a warm welcome to you for the In Conversation program with Lieutenant General Pradeep Chandran Nair, AVSM, YSM, Director General of Assam Rifles. I will request Mr. Anil Rajput, Chairman, FICCI Cascade, to please make the welcome address.
Thank you, Swati. Thank you very much to all the participants and the dignitaries who joined us today. A very good morning to you and a warm welcome to the In Conversation series. This is the platform that we actually thought about last year. And I find that this is an exciting platform that FICCI Cascade has created, where we share insights and have a candid and spontaneous dialogue to understand various facets of smuggling and counterfeiting with our esteemed guests. As part of the series, we have had some of the most amazing minds join us for conversation on a wide range of topics pertaining to this subject. We are delighted to have with us today Lieutenant General Pradeep Chandran Nair, Director General, Assam Rifles. Lieutenant General Nair is the 21st DG of Assam Rifles, which is popularly known as Sentinels of the Northeast. A decorated officer with Ati Vishisht Seva Medal and Yuddha Seva Medal, Lieutenant General Nair has rich experience with Assam Rifles and the Northeast. Thank you for taking time out from your busy schedule and joining us. We are really grateful to you. I would also like to take this opportunity to welcome Mr. Deep Chand, former Special Commissioner of Delhi Police and advisor with FICCI Cascade. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a well-known fact that global economy is significantly impacted by the illicit trade, which makes up a multi-billion-dollar illegal industries. There are several estimates about it, so I'm not going to dwell into those estimates. But I'm going to definitely share my thoughts that it negatively impacts legitimate economy, deprives government of revenue for vital public service, forces higher burden on taxpayers, incurs job losses for the country where goods are being smuggled, and exposes to people to various dangers, as ineffective products can sometimes take lives of many people. They are not built in the standard and the right atmosphere, environment. The factories, you don't know where they are built, what kind of standard operating procedure they follow. So these are some of the things that happen when the illicit trade gets a huge push. Moreover, it threatens local industries on which depends the livelihood of many. A recent study we had conducted, which is estimated in just about 5 sectors, India loses 16 lakh jobs. And this, mind you, that this figure also is for the year 2017 and 18. And then in the last few years, this must have also grown because the menace of smuggling continues to thrive. With all resources at our command and disposable, taking a very strong action against these people, but we are unable to actually control this menace because of the motives that these nefarious fellows have and the arbitrage that they benefit from this activity. You know, I've been mentioning this, that besides unemployment and massive financial losses, smuggling also creates large-scale destabilization by fomenting crime and funding insurgency and terrorism. Because at the end of the day, you know, people who are engaged in this activity are not saint people. They are all antisocial elements. All their means are underground. And, you know, when this easy money comes in their hand, how they use it, for what purpose that they use it. So we normally, when we discuss this issue, we end up discussing what is the loss to our exchequer. But loss to our exchequer is a very, very small component. The real loss to us is the amount of money that we end up spending to control this menace. And whatever we actually end up controlling is only tip of the iceberg. Unfortunately, this problem got compounded during COVID crisis, where criminals used the pandemic as an opportunity to increase their nefarious activities, causing significant damage on the economy of the nation, health, and safety of the consumers. Since the onset of pandemic, I must compliment our enforcement agencies that they have been working tirelessly to handle these, you know, antisocial elements, taking several steps. And I have seen several media reports where they have raided, seized, smuggled, spurious, and counterfeit products, whether it is sanitizers, masks, PPE kits, disinfectants, toiletries, cosmetics, electronic goods, cigarettes, spices, drugs, alcohol, you name anything, you know, and it comes through the illicit route. And it is not confined to any one state. India, as you know, has porous borders, and these things come from across the country, anywhere. And they use all routes, whether it's a sea route, whether it's an air route, or whether it is a land route. They don't spare. Wherever they find an opportunity, they end up making their inroads in this. And I must, at this stage, compliment the leadership of Mr. Nair, especially Assam Rifles, which has shown tremendous grit and commitment in dealing with these people especially from Indo-Myanmar border, where they have done huge amount of work, and several, in fact, you know, I can see almost on daily basis, there is somebody or the other who is getting caught. But I'm sure there are many who are still escaping, because the fact is that they continue to come, which means that they manage to escape also. And what I've learned, I've never been to that place, that it is a very difficult terrain. And these people find different routes to enter our country. But my salute to Assam Rifles for doing such a commendable job during this period. Thank you very much, DG sir, for doing such a wonderful job, and FICCI Cascade wholeheartedly support every endeavor, and anything that we can assist or do, we would be delighted from our side to extend every helping hand. Over the last year, in fact, in this month itself, I've noticed Assam Rifles in multiple operations with other agencies and departments have seized contraband worth crores in Mizoram. You know, so I mean, your team under your leadership continues to do phenomenal job, and we really appreciate that from our side. And I take from my team a pride that FICCI Cascade from its side has been trying to sensitize all the policymakers on this menace. And we also would request you to give us some ideas, and while you are having conversation with Mr. Deepchand, as to what else FICCI Cascade can do from its side to deal with this this menace, because we are very keen that our country, over a period of time, if we can't eradicate, at least we should minimize the loss that is happening because of this. Unfortunately, our geographical coverage cannot be changed, and then our borders will remain porous, and then these people will continue to have access. Yet, we all have to remain vigilant and conscious of this fact that a more serious effort is required by all the stakeholders in dealing with this problem. As you must be aware that FICCI Cascade has been focusing on the need to curb the problem of growing illicit trade in counterfeits, pass-offs, smuggled goods, and accordingly, a dedicated forum, Cascade, which is, the full form is Committee Against Smuggling and Counterfeit Activities, Destroying the Economy. FICCI Cascade, in pursuance of its agenda, has been organizing series of multi-stakeholder dialogue to tackle this adversary and spread awareness about this.
I think we lost connectivity with Mr. Rajput. So if you can just bear for a minute or two, I think he'll be back. I think Mr. Rajput is back. So.
Sorry, my light went off, so got dropped off. Thank you very much, and over to you, Swati.
Thank you, sir, for your welcome address. May I now request Mr. Deepchand, former Special Commissioner of Police, New Delhi, and advisor to FICCI Cascade, to please make the opening statement and moderate the session with DG, sir. Mr. Deepchand, over to you.
Thank you, Swati. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all once again. Assam Rifles is the oldest paramilitary force in India, whose primary role is to protect part of northeastern borders of our country. The force remains posted in some of the most remote and underdeveloped areas and provides security to the local people. They perform many roles, including the provision of internal security under the control of Indian Army, conducting of counterinsurgency and border security operations, providing aid to civilians in times of emergency, and providing communication, medical assistance, and education in the remote areas. No doubt, the Assam Rifles is aptly called Friends of the Northeast People. It is the most awarded and decorated paramilitary force in India. It manages India's 1,643 border kilometers of border areas, with Myanmar running through Arunachal Pradesh, Mizoram, Manipur, and Nagaland. This vast stretch of border is unfenced and is prone to the cross-border criminal activities, such as human trafficking and smuggling of drugs, arms, gold, wildlife parts, cigarettes, and many more items. Assam Rifle personnel have been constantly intercepting and seizing illegal consignments of smuggled goods along the borders while providing security to the borders. Intensity of their activities can be understood by the fact that, as reported in various media reports, in the current year, so far, Assam Rifles have made about 15 major seizures worth crores of rupees from the border areas, and the seizure includes foreign origin smuggled cigarettes in very large number, in addition to drugs, areca nuts, betel nuts, arms and ammunition, and drugs, etc. We are privileged today to have with us Lieutenant General Pradeep Chandran Nair, Ati Vishisht Seva Medal, Yudh Seva Medal, the DG of Assam Rifles, in today's program organized by FICCI Cascade. Lieutenant General PC Nair, AVSM, YSM, the Director General of Assam Rifles, was born on 15th July 1964 at Pune. The officer did his schooling from Sainik School and joined NDA Khadakwasla in 1982. He was commissioned into the 18th Sikh Regiment on 14th December 1985, which he later commanded at Faizabad and in subsector Hanif in Siachen Glacier region. General officer has served extensively in the Northeast in Nagaland, Manipur, Assam, and Sikkim. He commanded a brigade in Manipur, where he was awarded the Yudh Seva Medal. He also served as the Inspector General of Assam Rifles North in Nagaland, for which he was decorated with the Ati Vishisht Seva Medal. He has held several important postings in senior capacity. He was posted as the Director General of Recruitment at Army Headquarters prior to taking over as DG Assam Rifles. Now, I would request General Nair, the DG of Assam Rifles, to kindly let us know how the Assam Rifles has been performing such a stupendous role of intercepting the smugglers in the very inhospitable terrains bordering Myanmar, in addition to providing security in these border areas. Later, we will also ask few questions from the General on the working of Assam Rifles to understand how they are performing such excellent job in the difficult terrain. So, may I request General Chandran to kindly enlighten us about the activities of Assam Rifles vis-a-vis smuggling and counterfeiting.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. To begin with, my extreme gratitude to Shri Anil Rajputji, Shri Deepchandji, and FICCI Cascade for having given me this platform to give our views from the Assam Rifle side on how we are managing or how we are conducting the tasks or the tasks that have been assigned to us. So thank you very much. Previous to me, my predecessor also had given a talk in Delhi, which was with regard to the border guarding role itself and use of technology. I'm sure, sir, you were present there and you are aware of that. But from there, I take on from him Assam Rifle, as you're aware, so you already mentioned, we are the oldest paramilitary force. We are about 186 years old. And when we were first raised, we were raised in Assam, in the Barak Valley. Kachar was the name of the place. And essentially, it was a motley group of 750 armed policemen who were raised by the British. Essentially, that was to guard against the raids that were carried out by the tribes in the hills, Lushai Hills to be specific, which is now Mizoram. These tribes used to come down to the plains in Assam and raid the plainsmen, and just to protect them and protect other British interests, this police force was created. So from that strength of 750 people, we are now today at 46 battalion. We are 46 battalions strong. In addition, we have also, about 2 years back, shed a battalion to the NDMA. 13 NDRF battalion is an Assam Rifle battalion, which is currently positioned in Ludhiana to take care of J&K also for disaster-related issues. Now, as we progress from, again, I go back to 1835, we were termed as Assam Rifles only in the 20th century, early part of the 20th century. But the point that I'm trying to state is that our presence here in the Northeast has been very long. In the remotest parts of Northeast, you all are aware that the connectivity is not very good in the Northeast. People know Assam Rifles very well. Even the remotest corners, people are aware, and it's aspirational for people in the remote areas to join Assam Rifles. People may not be knowing about Army, but the Assam Rifles, yes, they know. Now, we started this border guarding role only after independence, that is 1948. And once we started that, in few years' time, moving forward in the 1955, 56, that is when insurgency began in Nagaland, what is today Nagaland, in the Naga Hills of Assam. And consequent to that, along with the army, we got deployed extensively in counterinsurgency role, which we are still doing even now in the Northeast, specifically in South Arunachal Pradesh, which have the districts of Tirap, Chandran, and Longding. Then coming south, entire state of Nagaland, then Manipur. Essentially, these are the three areas where there is insurgency at length. Assam is more or less quiet now. Active are these three states only, and all of them border Myanmar. Going down further to Mizoram, that also had its share of insurgency from the late 60s till the Mizo Accord was finally signed in 1986. And ever since, Mizoram has been very peaceful. Only lately the nation came to know about Mizoram when the border fight between Assam and Mizoram happened, that is related to police, but that's a very, very internal and localized affair. So the point I'm really trying to make is that we have been extensively involved both in the border guarding, border management, border defense roles, as also the counterinsurgency, counterterrorism role. Now, along with all these is the other mandate, which happens to be the topic of today, which is anti-smuggling operations. As you all are aware, in the last decade or so, the insurgency levels have really gone down. And what has concurrently also happened is the amount of smuggling has increased. Now, if I can spell out something in terms of figures, let me go in the last 4 years, 2018, 19, 20, and the current year, which is 21. The total contraband stuff in 2018 that we caught, just the Assam Rifle caught, was about 180 crores worth, almost 180 crores worth. The next year, that went to about 643 crores, which is more than 3 times. Then last year, it was 875 crores. This year, we are just at July, the first 7 months, we've already got 746 crores worth, which is almost 85% of what we caught last year. Now, what another point that needs to be emphasized here is, of all the catches that we've had, the major part or the major amount in terms of crores is the drugs. It's 75% and above of all this recoveries that we've done is all drug related. And why is it so? All of us are aware of this famous golden triangle which lies just to our southeast. That is the junction of Thailand, Myanmar, and Laos. That is the area where most of the drugs, essentially poppy cultivation happens. And this poppy then gets converted to heroin and is smuggled inwards into India through these northeastern states. The manner in which it happens is, there again, you have many insurgent groups, which are otherwise called the ethnic armed groups in Myanmar. There are over 150 of them there, whether it is the Shans, the Kachins, the Karens, the Kayas, the Mons, the Chins, the Rakhines. These are all multiple ethnic groups in Myanmar, and all of them are extensively involved in propping up not just drug cultivation, but the transportation, the conversion into heroin, and then selling it across, not just in the subcontinent, but also exporting it to Europe, to North America. And the routes that are used are multiple. Some of it goes through Bangladesh, some of it through the seas, that is the Bay of Bengal, and of course a large part of it which comes through these northeastern states. In fact, the two most affected states where this used to happen was Nagaland and Manipur, and of late Mizoram also. So it is actually, somebody had read an article recently that from Golden Triangle we now need to call it Golden Pentagon or Golden Hexagon, because of these additional three states from India that got involved in this. And how these states got involved is primarily because what goes from India are the precursors or the chemicals that help convert the poppy into heroin. Now, chemicals, these which are produced in abundance at very low prices in India, go across, and all these ethnic armed groups which I mentioned, who have these huge factories, syndicates, where the drug is converted into heroin, they need these precursors, and these chemicals essentially go from India, which is why these states are affected in such a big way. Now, if I also want to mention that most of the people who are involved in this, it's actually the ladies. Lately, last 2 to 3 years, what has come to our notice is 60% of the conduits who are used for transporting the drugs across are women. The items that are there, you've already brought out. It's traditionally, when it all started, when the smuggling started, it used to be only Burma teak. Then gradually it went on to these drugs. Then you have gold, you have spices, you have the Chinese products, electronic goods, sports goods, all of them. So coming back to your statement of how are we actually addressing this problem? While our primary role remains counterinsurgency, counterterrorism, and of course, the other role which is not spoken of much is our conventional role, which is taking part in a war. Assam Rifles has taken part in all wars, not just post-independence, but even pre-independence. And I wish to flag in a particular fact, a very less known fact, is during the Second World War, when the Battle of Imphal and Battle of Kohima happened, this battle also was termed as the turning point of the Second World War. In 2013, if you recollect, there was a lot of media coverage on this, that this was the crucial Battle of Kohima, which turned the scales against the Japanese. But who helped this in a big way is not really known to most of the public. And that is where Assam Rifles had a big role to play. In Nagaland, then we had 3 Assam Rifles, which is also the oldest Assam Rifle battalion, raised in 1835. So we had this battalion also called as the Naga Hills Battalion deployed there. As the Japanese forces advanced through Imphal and came into the hills of Nagaland, there was a resistance that was offered by 3 Assam Rifles. And it so happened that it was a race as to who would reach Kohima first. Would the British reinforcements from the plains of Assam reach first, or would the Japanese reach Kohima first? So every hour, every half a day mattered. The Assam Rifle forces were very successful in delaying the Japanese by 2 days, which proved very critical. In those 2 days, the army reinforcements, 2 Mountain Division to be specific, could move into Kohima, and that is how the tables turned. The Japanese were beaten back. I'm just making a reference point here, but also what is very less known to people is we were also employed in Sri Lanka when our forces were deployed there, as also in Jammu and Kashmir in 1990. And here in the 90s, actually, 1990 onwards till about 95, I would like to make a specific mention of 7 Assam Rifle, which in 1991 May, this is exactly 20 years ago, had one of the most, probably the most successful operations in JNK, as it is called, because in one single operation, which was spread over 4 nights, led by a JCO, a junior commissioned officer, and about 12 men, they managed to eliminate 78 militants over 4 days. In addition to taking about 15 odd terrorists as prisoners, and about some catch was about 118 weapons. So I'm just giving a background of what we are capable of. In 62 war, again in Arunachal, most of the forward locations which first bore the brunt of the Chinese assault were Assam Rifles Battalion. Now moving forward, I see ourselves having a big role. Even now, if there is something against China, if it happens, we will be there, and we want to assure the nation that you will not find us wanting. Now coming back to what we are currently doing, like I said, essentially we are involved in 3 issues: border guarding, border management, and border defense. Now, in doing all this, one of the fundamental tasks that we do is, of course, checking of smuggling. Now, where does it happen? Where do these people operate from? Where do these smuggled goods come from? The official points of entry are 4. Again, if I start from the north, in Arunachal we have the Pangsau. Then we have Awanko in Nagaland, which is not very extensively used. There's hardly any trade that happens from there. But coming south, Manipur, you have Moreh, which is the largest of all the trade transit points. The maximum trade, in fact, 90% of the trade that happens between India and Myanmar happens in Moreh. And then, of course, you go south further to Mizoram, and that is at Zokhautar. That's where it happens in Mizoram. So the official trade that happens between India and Myanmar, as per a trade treaty signed in 1994, these fall under 3 heads. One is the customary goods that has been exchanged over decades. Then is barter, which is essentially non-financial transaction. The goods are just exchanged. And the third is a normal kind of trade that happens. The difference really is, in customary, you have any goods which is worth about $1,000 US. There is no duty charged on that. Then on in barter, we have about 5% duty levied, but very difficult to assess how that duty happens. And then, of course, the normal trade. Now, in the normal trade, it is anything which is over $20,000 US. But what the people, usually the consignees do, or consigners do, is they send their packages in small quantities. So the amount of duty that they pay is actually very less. Added to that is the integrated checkposts that we are supposed to have at these trading points. Now, in these integrated checkposts, we are supposed to have officials from the customs, excise, immigration, forest department, animal husbandry, and the local police. But what is noticed is, now I'll talk specifically of Moreh, since 90% of the trade happens there. You actually don't have officials from all of them present. Now, that's a major disadvantage, given the fact Assam Rifles doesn't have the police powers. And I'll take a minute here to mention what are police powers. All the other border guarding forces, whether it is BSF, the ITBP, the CRPF deployed at places, they all have police powers, whereas Assam Rifles doesn't have. Now, that's a major setback or major handicap for us, because by not having police powers, we do not have the freedom of going and arresting people at will whom we suspect to be involved in smuggling. Similarly, we cannot initiate legal proceedings. We cannot file their FIRs, which the other border guarding forces can very well do. We are also not in any way involved in further, once a case has been registered against someone, we cannot further pursue that, because those then go with the excise and customs people, and we are really not privy to what happens there. So police powers is something which is an absolute must. This is something that has been projected by many of my predecessors. It is under consideration at the Ministry of Home Affairs, and if it does come, I'm sure the recoveries that we'll have is much more. Now, I just would want to emphasize on what change has happened during the COVID times. What exactly did the smugglers do? I already mentioned the major trading points. What actually happened during or is still happening in the COVID pandemic is there is no free movement of vehicles now that is happening. So everything that comes is on foot. Yet how do we see a spike in the quantity of smuggling? I mentioned in 2019, the amount was 516 crores. 2020, it went up to 688 crores, and this year it is 346 crores already. This is, I'm just talking of drugs. How has this happened? Essentially, the conduits or the people who are involved in this have changed tack. They have changed the routes that they take. The terrain, as was mentioned earlier by both Mr. Rajput and Mr. Deepchand, is very difficult. Huge mountains, hills, jungles, with huge with rivers, streams running between. In terms of inhabitation, about 80% of the places are not inhabited at all. So it becomes that much easier for all the smugglers to change their routes, change the locations from where they enter in. And let me give you an example of Mizoram, for example. We have 3 battalions there in Mizoram, and the Indo-Myanmar border in Mizoram is about 520, if I remember correct, kilometers. Of these 3 battalions, you have 1 battalion which is at Aizawl itself. So that battalion, truly speaking, is not available for a border guarding role. Less than half of it is available. So you have 2.5 battalions over 520 kilometers. You do the mathematics. I mean, you can't have, even if you physically deploy people, you will have one person and the next person will be 2 kilometers away or 3 kilometers away. So how do you check? How do you control? Given the fact that there is a lot of tribal overlap, there are huge tribal loyalties that are there. Let me give you an example. Again, if you see in the state of Nagaland, the northern part of Nagaland and eastward towards Myanmar, you have the Konyaks, who form about 18% of the population of Nagaland. And this Konyak population spreads over into Myanmar also. So for them, there is really no India, there is no Burma. They just look at each other as Konyaks or the Konyak Nagas. 75% of them are in India, 25% of them are in Nagaland. You come a little south, you have the Khemungans. Now Khemungans, 35% of them are in India, 65% of them are in Nagaland. You all would have heard of that famous village called Lungwa, which is there in Mon, which is divided, half the villages in Myanmar, half the villages in India. And the peculiar thing is the citizens of that village have dual citizenship. They are Myanmari citizens also, they're Indian citizens as well. And the interesting fact is the house of the village headman, half of it, 2 bedrooms are in India, 2 bedrooms are in Myanmar. So what I'm trying to essentially emphasize is the loyalties are very, very fierce. Nobody will ever give you information of where the drug cartel is moving from, where are the smugglers, what routes are being used. So we have to constantly innovate, we have to constantly explore, because these tracks, jungle tracks which are there, year after year they change. While this year a particular track may come from one direction, next year that gets changed, it goes elsewhere. But notwithstanding, Assam Rifles does undertake all its tasks very seriously. The methodology that we apply is essentially, we have a concept which is called as company operating base. That forms our nucleus. It is from there that we send our troops ahead, in which they occupy temporary operating bases, they occupy mobile vehicle check posts on roads, they undertake patrolling, institute ambushes, they move along the border. Now, all those activities are done essentially to catch the smugglers. Now we are restricting ourselves only to the smuggling part. And in doing so, what also happens is the counterinsurgency things also get addressed, in the sense that task of looking for movement of militants into the country also gets addressed. So the border actually is very porous. I won't even call it porous, it's an open border. There is nothing that is in the form of a fence to divide India and Myanmar. In fact, all that we have is border pillars. You have one border pillar here, the next border pillar is, let's say, 2 kilometers away. So between that border pillar and this border pillar, if you move through the jungles, you won't know which is India, which is Myanmar. And our brief, Assam Rifle brief, is we have to remain this side of the Indo-Myanmar border only. If there are any accidental transgressions that happen, the Myanmar army raises that in a very big way, because obviously no country will like its sovereignty to be threatened, even if it's a friendly country. So these are some of the compulsions that we operate from. I wish to also make a mention of what is our level of preparedness. How well are we prepared? This is essentially to give an assurance. And in this, I would like to cover our manpower, our weapons, equipment, and other things that are in place. Let me begin with the manpower. In terms of officers, as you would be aware, 80% of our officers are from the regular Indian Army, who come here on deputation of 2 to 3 years. They are the major part. But what is actually our strength is the 20% officers who are from the Assam Rifle cadre, who have grown up from the ranks and have become officers. And these officers actually form our major strength, because they have this institutional memory in them. They have grown up in the system, and they have also been through the officers training academy, where the men from the Indian Army who become officers are also trained. So they're trained with them. And once they are here with our battalions, their experience matters a lot to us. So in terms of our officers, we are quite okay. Whatever number of officers we are authorized, we have almost that much, hardly 1% or 1.5% short. So that's okay. But in terms of soldiers, yes, we are short. Each battalion, as I would like to mention, is of a strength of about 1,300 odd. And of these 1,300, each battalion is today having a deficiency of 120 to 140, depending on whether it is a border guarding battalion or it's a battalion which is in the hinterland. Now we are trying to make up those numbers. And my guess is in the next four years or so, we should be able to take care of that as well. But what is another issue that needs to be understood is, unlike the army, where 70 to 80% of the people retire by the age of 40, here the retirement age is 60. So it's another 20 years, which also means from the age of 40, the biology starts catching on. You start getting various kinds of illnesses. So while we may look a 6-company strong battalion, we usually have about 100 odd people, or 100 to 120, who are medically a little down, cannot be used for all tactical operations that we would otherwise want them to. In terms of weapons and equipment, like I said, since we are a paramilitary force, we have to be not only taking care of counterinsurgency and the border guarding role, we also have to be prepared for any conventional operations. That is, in case of a war, we have to be prepared for that also. So our weapons have to be not just CI specific or counterinsurgency specific, but also has to match up with what the army has. And it's not just the weapons, even the communication equipment and the other equipment that are needed. So currently we are in a process of acquiring certain new kinds of rifles, new kinds of pistols, some rocket launchers, night vision devices, handheld thermal imagers, scanners, then quadcopters, some carbines. So a lot of it is happening, and the good part is, unlike the Ministry of Defense, in the Home Ministry things happen a little faster, because firstly the MHA has laid out certain fundamental basic weapons which are to be kept with all the paramilitary force, all the CAPFs. So there is already a certain level of weapons that we can easily get. In addition, there is also a provision that for operations, if you need something which is urgent, it gets sorted very soon. So that is an added advantage that we have. There was a mention of, are there any linkages between the smuggling and terrorism? Well, this is not something new. If you look at Taliban, which is so much in the news in the last 10 days, over the last 20 years, they have been extensively involved in poppy cultivation and smuggling of drugs. That is again part of the Golden Crescent there. You look at Hamas, they were also involved, are still involved. And Myanmar, I already mentioned of the various ethnic armed groups who are involved in a very big way. But you look at our militant groups, I'll only mention, let's say in Nagaland, you have the NACN-IM, also they are in Manipur as well, and in Assam, Arunachal also. It is said that they charge 20% tax on everything that goes. I'm talking of drugs, whether it is cultivation, harvest, packaging, movement, distribution, every level, every person has to pay them 20%. Similarly, if you look at the Manipur-based militant groups, whether it is the UNLF or the PLA, it is said that 60% of their funding is actually coming from drugs. Now, how is while we did make a mention of how drugs have affected our economy, how smuggling has affected our economy, the local economy in particular, what also needs to be understood is the effect that it has had on the youth. Let's say 20 years back or 25 years back, in fact, post the 80s, mid 80s, that is when drugs started moving into Manipur. And it started moving in such a big way, it also in some way coincided with the arrival of HIV/AIDS, late 80s, early 90s. So that period between late 80s till about 2000, Manipur was known as the HIV capital of India, because a large number of youth found drugs which were very cheap. They're just coming across from Myanmar. Now the same problem has now shifted to Mizoram. Today, as per an estimate, a study which was done recently, 2.5% of the people in Myanmar, in Mizoram, are drug addicts, and 90% of them happen to be youth. So this is a major hit to the so-called demographic dividend which we've been having. As you would be aware, Mizoram has got a very high literacy rate. It's got 91-92% literacy. Manipur is no less. Manipur is about almost 70%, which is literacy rate, which is almost 9-10% higher than the national literacy rate, which might come as a surprise to people, given the fact that people say Northeast is backward. So how do you have such high literacy rates? Because education is not all that bad as compared to, let's say, heartland or the central parts of India. So this, I think, is a major area that needs to be addressed, of how to get the youth out of this. And finally, before I take on the questions, I just wish to assure everyone that Assam Rifles has been doing its job no matter where we were called. But since we were known more specifically as a Northeast centric force, I would like to assure the citizens of the nation that you shall not find us wanting. And every time we are called for, we will be there at your service. Thank you. I'm ready to take questions.
Thank you, General. You have really taken us through the Northeast. The entire narration was just like reading a interesting book. How the not only about the Assam Rifles, how its history began, and how it has participated in various sagas of this Indian history, and its important role in the Second World War and Indochina War, and this Mizoram Accord, and how the Tirip and Changlang, where the of this Arunachal Pradesh are suffering from the NSCNI. And incidentally, I happen to be IG in Arunachal Pradesh and also in Mizoram. So some of things I know, but the way you have narrated this is really commendable, and it is just like reading a very interesting book.
Thank you, sir.
You have really answered all the possible queries of the participants, but still, I will be doing some duty to ask you few questions like, how has the Assam Rifles has been dealing with the problem of smuggling, and what are the main features of smuggling which Assam Rifle has noticed in terms of item of smuggling within specific areas that are more vulnerable? Also, have you observed any change in the pattern of smuggling of goods and products due to prevailing COVID scenario?
Okay, sir. Like I did make a mention, a small reference in my talk. The cultivation of most of this, and now let's start with drugs, then I'll come to the other commodities. Drugs, because 75 to 80% of what is coming in terms of the value is of drugs. So drugs, most of it gets cultivated in that famous golden triangle. Then it gets pushed up to the bordering areas of, I'm talking of Indo-Myanmar border, in the Sagaing region and the Chin state. It's astride this, which is opposite actually Nagaland, Manipur and Mizoram. This is where these things get pushed up in small amounts, and when it happens, it is said that they are in league with the security forces. One doesn't know, one is only mentioning what one reads in the media. So once it is pushed up close to the borders, they have units which help convert this. And I made a mention that the chemicals go from the Indian side and they get converted. In terms of the other wood, of course, has traditionally been coming from Myanmar only. But what has increasingly happened in the last 2.5 3 years is areca nuts, betel nuts. Huge amounts of betel nuts are coming. If they go by duty, they have to pay almost 100% duty at More. And you have this huge demand for betel nuts because of the pan masala industry that is there this side. So, for example, if it costs 20 rupees a kg in Indonesia, by the time it comes to mainland India, let's say Delhi, that 20 rupees is almost 180, 200 rupees, almost 10 times the cost. So what has particularly come to our notice is many trucks full of areca nuts are coming. In fact, in Mizoram, if you go to 2 posts, I would like to mention Assam Rifle Post, Champai and Zukhautar Post. If you go there, right opposite you along the Indo-Myanmar border, some that side, some this side, you will find huge storage where all these smuggled goods are come and dumped. And there are, some of it is electronic, some of them sports goods, and the like. But the point is, again, I made a reference, since we do not have the police powers, we cannot go and straight away arrest them. We cannot raid those storage or those shelters which are there. 80% of them are across, 20% of them are this side of the border. And they're very prominent. You cannot miss them. Huge sheds with blue roofs. Now, similarly, in Manipur, for example, again, what has happened differently in the pandemic is most of the drug conversion that is from opium to poppy is now happening inside the denotified area. There's an area in Manipur, 34 square kilometers, which is called as the denotified area, where the Armed Forces Special Powers Act does not exist. Similarly, it doesn't exist in Mizoram either. So that is another handicap. In Mizoram, neither do we have the police powers, nor do we have the ASPA to go and arrest someone. While in rest of Manipur, ASPA is there, but in this denotified area, it doesn't exist. So most of the manufacturing has shifted into the heart of Manipur. And we would want the state police to play a greater active role because it is their area. Another thing that they've changed tack is while most of the goods, like I said, used to come by road, now they are following jungle foot tracks or other tracks which are not used. They also, the locals, because of the huge ethnic loyalties that are there, they would by and large inform them of the location state of Assam Rifles. So these people, while moving in, they avoid locations where we are there. Though we are not static at any place, we are constantly mobile. Our operations are all dynamic in nature, yet they manage to find ways and means by which they can smuggle these things inside. So that is what is the difference.
General, I was going through the news items indicating the huge recovery Assam Rifle has been making in the, as mentioned by you also, in this last 7 months only, you have recovered huge amount of contrabands. Specifically, I wanted to know, because everywhere you are saying, this says that huge amount of cigarettes have been recovered. How these cigarettes have been coming into India, and what is the source and what is the exact volume? How many cases cigarettes have been recovered?
I hope you don't smoke, sir.
No, I left smoking when I joined police.
That was the lighter side. Well, to be more specific, cigarettes have increasingly started coming now. Earlier, it used to be only coming from Manipur, More. But what has again changed in the last 2 to 3 years is most of it is now also coming through Mizoram. And Mizoram, what is peculiar about Mizoram is the boundary that we share with Myanmar is not a land boundary, it's river. So they bring in through the boats at night, and especially when the rivers are in spate, when we are not aware. So cigarette, I can't tell you the exact figures, but if I can club cigarettes, human hair, ammonia buffer solution, chemical lime, all these together, if I club together, sir, this year, we've got worth 108 crores. Last year, it was 19.2 crores, which means a 5-fold increase. And we're not done with the year yet. And these cigarettes essentially are coming from, most of them are very cheap ones, Chinese, Indonesian, Malaysian, all mix, Thai, from all these countries. Because probably the duty or the excise which is charged in India is very high. That's why maybe these cigarettes are so cheap.
You are right, because the duty being charged on cigarettes in India is very high, and that makes it an attractive business. How do you plan to, must be having some plans in how to stop this smuggling of cigarettes from the border areas in the adjoining Myanmar?
We have some plans in place that we've ordered for certain full body scanners of vehicles. As and when the roads open up post pandemic, I'm sure once this happens regularly, we'll be able to catch. But currently, we're also thinking of vapor detection systems. There are a few of them that we are studying, and I'm told it's something which is very successful. So if we are able to get those, these vapor detection systems can catch tobacco, can catch opium, can catch heroin, everything. So we are planning to maybe upgrade technologically.
I think the vapor detection systems are not that costly.
Yes, sir.
These can be provided at the border points in large number so that the detection becomes easy. Okay, finally, as Cascade, our chairman, Mr. Anil Rajput mentioned, Cascade has been engaged in for a decade for addressing the concerns of smuggling and counterfeiting would you like to make some suggestions as in what way there can be regular interactions or coordination between Cascade and Assam Rifles to achieve the common objectives?
I would, for this, what all I will say is, since you would be interacting with many other paramilitary forces, CAPFs, whatever lessons you get from them, I would request if you could share with us. Similarly, like I've just mentioned, of new tax, new methodologies that the smugglers are adopting in different states, given the pandemic, we would similarly want to share it with you. Going forward, we also want greater academic interaction with you, so we would tell our people to, particularly our boots on ground, our company commanders, young company commanders, to write on their experiences, and we could share these. We could also hold these webinars and seminars on a more frequent basis. As also, besides webinars, you could have meetings in Delhi again via video, or we could personally be meeting up in Delhi to have some kind of lesson sharings. Probably we could also think of some publications which could be, let's say, 6 monthly to begin with, and could be later made quarterly, on maybe the case studies of the various catches that we have, the large amount of contraband stuff that we're catching. Maybe we could make case studies out of that and send it. Incidentally, we in the last 1.5 years, we've also got into an MOU with Manipur University here and the United Services of India in Delhi for reasons of academic exchange. And there's a lot of academic scholarly movement that is happening both ways.
Well, I think it was very enlightening to interact with you, and the participants must have gained good knowledge about the Assam Rifles, its activities, and the tremendous work that is doing on the counterfeiting and smuggling front, and apprehending the people and recovering large amount of contrabands. That includes cigarettes, areca nut, gold, drugs, mainly, as you said, 75% of the recoveries of the drugs. And you have given good suggestions. We can have better interaction, more interaction, and as you mentioned about some studies being conducted by the University of Manipur. You have got an MOU with them, an MOU with Delhi institution. I think these all will go a long way in preventing the smuggling, as well as also helping the nation and its economy. As you know, the smuggling is a major factor which harms the economy of any nation. So we will also benefit from the good work, excellent work, which is being done by Assam Rifle on the front of anti-smuggling. Thank you very much, General, and thank you for being with us and enlightening us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me over.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks once again. Really appreciate your candid and very detailed interaction. And we hope to actually see you more often and have more engagement on this matter. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everybody.